As much as I praise the world building of Mass Effect, there's really only one misfire. A single drawback that plagues multiple aspects of the game, and this is recycled content. I understand that developers have time constraints, budgets, and any number of conflicts during a game's development that may force them to cut corners. But an overuse of assets can hinder or destroy what makes an atmosphere unique. I'm sure we're all familiar with asset flips nowadays that put in minimal effort to distinguish themselves. I'm not saying Mass Effect falls into that category, but it's a prime example of how its own recycled content slightly hurts its believability and immersion. To be clear, there are two distinct differences in what it means to recycle said assets and content, and I believe Mass Effect lies somewhere in the middle. For starters, there's the bad faith effort of the blatant copy-paste, which we see plenty of here, to be fair. It's something we notice when we're first able to explore the galaxy. The outposts are the same, the collectibles, the mines, the derelict ships, the terrain, all identical to the last. As we progress through the game, even the weapons and armors mimic one another, only with different coats of paint. And once you do notice, you always will. After enough repetition, the thrill of planetary discovery becomes slightly more mundane each time, and the discovery of new equipment becomes a numbers game rather than satisfying cosmetic variety. You can attempt to handwave some of them, like the ships are of a certain model or the outposts are prefabs, so whatever starter colonies can be established quickly, like these boxy container things here. But whatever the case, it becomes more obvious as we progress. The other distinction is the well-intended good faith effort of working with what you have.
I suppose I can see both sides, but what's done is done.
I said before in my main video, Mass Effect's plot follows a repeating formula. If you didn't catch it, it goes something like this. Travel to planet, solve local issues, complete main story quest, back to Normandy for character building, repeat 4 times. In the meantime, we hit up the copy-pasted planets. It's also worth noting this is where most of the content was reused. In the additional exploration zones, the main story planets demonstrate plenty of diversity, so no qualms there. To their credit, they attempted to spruce up the repeated locations. For example, they block off certain corridors using objects, seal off doors to block access, desperately trying to change the player pathing. The wall dressing and lighting is varied, and enemy types, melee and ranged, force us to utilize the space in different ways, especially by the determined placing of explosive objects. The cutscenes are repeated as well, but they at least match to the backgrounds to the planets we traveled. And lastly, they even carry over the varied objectives ideas at these locations, like crewmate missions, for example.
Thank you for saving me from those things.
Commander, that's him.
Are you sure it's him?
Positive.
Personally, I traveled to every location and gathered all collectibles, so depending on the player, we may or may not even notice. But the more I explored, the more I realized that everything was too homogeneous. Despite spending plenty of time in the universe, I'd still struggle to distinguish the design of Turian, Asari, or human structures. Nor could I tell you their preferences of environment or decoration, or the flavors of any of the other species.
I don't like the idea of aliens studying the architecture of Alliance ships. I should go.
So to sum it all up, it's a little immersion breaking, but it's definitely not enough to destroy the experience, because they put the effort where it counts. It's just that, in an industry where companies constantly try and pull a fast one on us, it's important to be able to identify when we're being had, to distinguish between a con and a constraint.
I don't ever want to see this gang again. If I do...
You won't. I'm not so foolish as to break my word to a Spectre.
But because they tried to mix it up as they did, it feels like an honest effort.
Why are you hiding?
With that being said, I'm happy to admit that Mass Effect's recycled content is simply a ripple in a well-laid foundation. A minor distraction in the otherwise well-executed play that is the world building of Mass Effect.